Welcome to the Bleav Podcast Network, SoCal Sweat. My name is Anne McDaniels, a former NFL cheerleader and product manager turned actress and model who dreams of being a UFC fighter. Meow. Learning strategies to help motivate others leads me to bring you interviews each week from a range of athletes, experts in fitness and nutrition, and so much more. Thanks for listening to Bleav, the #1 podcast for working professionals, and let's push our endorphins to higher performance through SoCal Sweat. This is your host, Anne McDaniels, and I'm very excited to feature my dear friend, former NFL running back Gregory Bell. Starting at Notre Dame University, he moved on to the NFL to score 51 touchdowns in his career for the Buffalo Bills, LA Rams, and former LA Raiders. Besides his athletic prowess and success, he's a leader both on and off the field and continues to pay it forward with his Athletes for Life Foundation. NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell says, Greg is a true leader who does a terrific job helping young athletes see the bigger picture of life. Greg's Athletes for Life Foundation has been around for over 30 years and has been providing educational services, mentorship, and guidance to over 40,000 youth throughout Southern California. Their after-school programs prepare students to be ready for college. With the assistance of Nat Geo and Revolution K-12 online studies, students now have solutions to problems at their fingertips. During the summer, Gregory hosts separate intensive football camps in his player development program. And also, he added the How to Be a Girl camp, which teaches female empowerment to inner city youth. And finally, their PASS program invites pro athletes to speak at corporations, schools, and organizations that are starving and empowering themselves to reach their goals and dreams. The PASS leadership curriculum does it on a daily basis in the school system as well. And I can't wait to introduce my friend to you, Gregory Bell. 51 scored touchdowns as a running back in the NFL, Mr. Greg Bell. How are you today?
I'm doing pretty good. How about yourself?
Good. Thank you so much. Thanks for coming on the podcast today. I really appreciate it.
We seem to connect through email.
And we connected on a flight coming back from the Atlanta Super Bowl together. We were like,
how quickly time flies by us.
Yes, but you're the same person and you look the same, except we hear you are on a vegan diet now, and I'm very excited to hear about that.
But you know what? I it's kind of funny. I'm going to tell you that. Don't get all freaked out now. But when the whole pandemic started, I was in China. And so when I went to China, it was one of those things where a friend of mine kept telling me, you got to see this Game Changer. You got to see this video. And they kept asking me, do you know Lucius Smith? And it's just kind of funny. When I came back home, I sat down and watched the video. And all you got to do is watch that video one time. It's a great documentary. It'll make you think. Because I remember, I think it was like 93, 94 it was. I left and went to work for Roger Goodell in what's called back then, it was called the World League of American Football. And I was the vice president of the league. So I went over to Europe and I actually gave up eating meat because I was kind of, the food in Germany was weird. The food in Scotland was totally different. And I don't even want to talk about the food in Barcelona. I don't even want to go there. But I gave up eating meat. I just said, I'm going to eat lettuce, nuts. That was all I was going to do. And I did it. But when I came back, took blood testing and all that, and I was low in protein. And so I was like, darn, what didn't I do right? And then I figured out I did a lot of carb eating. And so this time was completely different. I've talked with Lucius. I've kind of talked to some friends of mine that have been vegans for years. I just need to live healthier. One of the things that kind of really was an impact on me was I had a business partner of 30 years named Ron King. We started Athletes for Life together, the whole 9 yards. And he passed away about a year and a half ago, it'll be 2 years in August, from pancreatic cancer. And I remember as he was going through the cancer, they took him off of animal meat and they had him doing a plant-based diet. And when he was doing it, he was perfect. He had the Whipple surgery. We were a year and a half from that surgery. And of course, he goes back to eating. He loved barbecue ribs, chicken.
Absolutely, as we talked about.
We loved barbecuing. We used to have contests all the time. And he got pancreatic cancer in his liver. 6 months later, he was gone. And something opens your eyes. It's, okay, what do I need to do differently in my life? And that was one of the things I thought I should do differently. And I just started, and I just went cold turkey and said, I'm stopping. So when I came back from China, I ended up going to Tanzania, and everybody over there thought I was crazy because, like, you're in the heart of animal land.
Right.
But I just said, you know what? I'm just going to stick with this plant-based diet. And so that's what I've been doing. And you don't miss a lot, but you do miss a lot of, you miss flavor. Let me say it that way. There's a difference in flavoring because there's only so much ways you can season a plant. Let's be honest.
Right.
But meat is a lot different. You know, I went through that, like I told you earlier, I was coming out of the stem cell injections, the stem cell service that I just did on my back. So a doctor put me on fish. She wanted me to get a little bit protein, a cleaner protein. So she put me on fish. So I've been doing shrimp and tilapia and cod and stuff like that, you know, mixing it with my salads. But most of the day, for the most part, I've given up eating. And when I'm done with this, you know, stem cell treatments, I'm gonna probably give up fish because I'm not a big fish eater anyway.
Yeah.
So because of the mercury. So it's just one of those things where I just, you know, it's interesting, but during this pandemic, I've become very creative.
You are a Martha Stewart tree hugger, and you said you have a quinoa burger with mushrooms and lentils in your refrigerator right now, hardening, and you're going to grill that?
I'm just, and I can grill it, or I can go ahead and just firm it out. And, you know, I've already softened the sweet. Oh, that's what I forgot to tell you. I had sweet potatoes in there. So the sweet potatoes are in there to give it that sweet flavor. And
thicken it up.
Every breakfast I have is lentils and quinoa, and I just do my agave and my fruit. So that, you know, I know I'm going to like it even before I even taste it because I actually got a little hideaway in Las Vegas. I've got a place over there that I go, and they have a burger that's similar. It doesn't have the quinoa, but it has the lentils and the black beans, and they make this meal over roasted vegetables that I die for. So I'm already got a taste of it.
Absolutely. And I'm going to send you a bunch of spices that I use to mix things up as a vegan. And I think the secret to that, because it's like, you can do vegan and it's great. And then you drive by even a Burger King and it's like, oh my God, that charbroiled smell. I think I use a lot of liquid smoke. It comes in applewood, hickory, mesquite, and that kind of can trick you, but it's a lot of salt. So anyway.
But I don't drive by Burger King anymore because they got the Impossible Burger. I just go in there now.
I know. No, it's not. It's a good transition, but congratulations on that little health. And I'm so sorry about your friend. That's really, really, really tough. But you took it in a positive way, and he probably would be proud of you knowing that you've changed your lifestyle with that.
Definitely.
But with that, I if we could go back to the NFL really quickly, you played, and you were a first-round draft pick for Notre Dame and the Bills, which is amazing. What was the transition mentally and physically to go from college game to pro game? Because it's
let me say it this way, because it's a positive to the Division I level football, because what people tend to forget is that there's always going to be a progression. There's always going to be a jump, regardless of what you do when you go from high school to you go to the college level, as you go on to the professional level, as you go into that retirement years. You know, my step, it decreased in speed, but the mental awareness became more clear. So I tell people all the time that the biggest thing that high school students or high school athletes have to do coming out of high school that I did not do it, you learn from your mistakes. I think that's sometimes the greatest lessons in life are those mistakes that you make. I wasn't a very studious football player. I just thought my gift would always take me beyond the norm. Yeah. And in high school, you know, you're 195 pounds, you're like 35, 40 pounds bigger than everyone. And you run a 10-400 meters, you're faster than everyone. You jump 43 inches in a vertical, you jump higher than everyone. I had a lot of God-given talents. And I just thought those things would always take me to the next level. And it's not until you get to a program like a Notre Dame and you're playing against the University of Miami, Southern California, Ohio State, you know, you're playing against really pro-level guys as you all are, but you're just one step below. So the game is faster by any means. And as you go from college to pros, it's even twice as fast. And so the mental awareness of the game is where you really have to step up your game. And I tell people all the time, my biggest mistake in my 8 years playing in the National Football League, I used all God-given gifts the first 4 years. So when I was in Buffalo, my first year at the Rams, I was just using my God-given talent. They give you film, tell you to take it home. I went home and decided I'm 23 years old to 25. I'm partying. I'm having fun. I got a lot of money in the bank. I can go to clubs. I just had fun. And I let my God-given talent, kind of keep me playing in the National Football League. And it wasn't until about that trade, when I got traded from Buffalo to Los Angeles, and I met John Robinson, who was a great running back coach, great running scheme coach, period. John basically would literally tell me, come in here at 7:30, we're going to go over the film, just he and I. And so now all of a sudden I had to study film. And so it's so much clarity when your mind is moving faster than your body. And that's what you see in the pro level. These guys, we study the game. We study the individual that we're really going to compete against. It's funny, people always will say, well, what did you think about this guy? What did you think about that guy? And if he wasn't an outside linebacker, I didn't study. So I knew what Lawrence Taylor was going to do. I knew what Andre Tippett was going to do, these Hall of Fame guys, because those are the guys I focused and I studied them. Now, I watched the whole defense to see where the holes were for me as a running back. But when it was me one-on-one, I really only focused on the guy that I had to spend most of my time following and blocking, things of that nature. So that's really the change in college. In college, I did very little blocking, and then I had to learn how to block and be a proficient blocker, know how to, set up blocks for my linemen. Those are all the progressions you're going to learn as a professional, that's different from what you did in college. Like I said, in college, we had a big offensive lineman. They made a hole at the 8, the 6 or the 4 hole. I went through it. And it's how fast did I go through it as far how far down the field I make the big play. So, it's always a progression. And I tell people now, that's the biggest key to life for me. What I try and do with my foundation is get kids to understand how much their mind can really absorb. And the more education you get, the better your life is going to be.
Absolutely. And with that, you come from Columbus, Ohio. You're a Midwestern guy. You're just a great guy. And I just was immediately so drawn to the fact that you have started this wonderful academy. He starts Athletes for Life, which is an athletic wisdom for students involving training and just teaching boys how to be men and girls how to be women. I didn't realize you had a female section of your camp until I looked at your latest website.
Yeah, I have a dear friend of mine, Josefa Salinas. If you've been in LA for 30 years, you know her as the voice behind the Quiet Storm. She's been in radio for about 40 years, started in San Francisco. You're from Michigan. Her ex-husband was Dwight Hicks. Wisconsin.
Then I cheered at Minnesota.
I'm sorry. Well, okay.
So
her husband is Dwight Hicks, her ex-husband used to play for the San Francisco 49ers. So she was a broadcaster in San Francisco when Dwight retired and they separated. She moved down to Los Angeles. She actually helped me start my broadcasting career at Power 106 because I was their sports director my last 2 years in the pros. And so it's one of those things where our friendship grew so much. I was in Europe. She ended up having a tumor on her brain and had to be removed while I was out of the country. And I didn't know a lot of this because I was out of the country. But when she came back, she had a kind of renewed sense of life as well. And so she started a program called How to Be a Girl. And so between her program and I adopted her program, and I bring her in because she's got all the Hollywood actors, entertainers, psychologists from up in Los Angeles. And so she brings them out to our summer program every summer so that we now have a girls program. So it's more of a merger than I started something. I really took advantage of the quality programs. People, I hate to say it this way, but most people, they see the sports world as a celebrity. And so kids are more opportune to listen to somebody they see on television. Absolutely. So we took the same approach with the women, and we've had she's had a lot of great female speakers as well as male speakers that have come out from Hollywood for us. We've had so many NFL players, NBA players that have come out to speak, to educate and mentor these kids. It's kind of funny. because of where we are right now in this whole gamut of social justice, of police brutality, of Black Lives Matter, I've tried to tell the NFL for 15 years, we have a relationship with 2 police departments in the county sheriff's department. They speak, they work, they hire our kids to park cars. Those are jobs that can be filled by an 18-year-old. So we've been working with the police and sheriff's department for over 15 years in San Bernardino County. I hate to say it, it's the highest crime rate in the state of California, but the good thing I can say is the working relationship that we've had with the police departments in the city of Rialto, city of San Bernardino, the county sheriff's department, we've always had a great working relationships, and our kids respond well to them. And so they've always been a positive influence for our kids, not necessarily a negative.
Oh, that's amazing. It's so important to see. You say San Bernardino is a high crime. Well, I had a Porsche at one time and it was stolen and it ended up in a house in San Bernardino County. So that's like, yeah, I'm familiar. I'm definitely familiar.
I tell people, it's, you find places that, when we started this foundation back in 1989, 90, my business partner, of course, was from San Bernardino. So I started meeting and talking and becoming friends with a lot of superintendents throughout the state. I speak at the state superintendent's conference every year or every other year. I speak at the African American superintendent that was basically, it's called the superintendent of color for brown and black superintendents that are here in the state of California. I speak at theirs because they're every other year. I've built such a quality relationship with so many superintendents. They've kind of adopted the foundation. So literally, when I say we have about 3 counties that support this foundation, we're talking Riverside, Moreno Valley, San Bernardino, and some Los Angeles County schools also come. We've been doing this program for 15 years. It's the longest running camp of this kind. It's a totally free camp for the kids. It started out as what we used to call the high school and the junior high school player development programs in the National Football League. But we took it so much further with the life skills, the math tutoring, the STEM programs that we have, the coding programs. When we're on this campus for a week, these kids they get an opportunity to see what college life is like. And it's amazing that 90% of our kids go on to college. And I think a lot of that is because they get that experience. Mm-hmm. When you get a chance to see something. I remember the first time I was a kid and the Kiwanis group sponsored me to go to a Fellowship of Christian Athletes camp. And it was on the Denison College in Southern Ohio. And so here I went to Denison University. I didn't know what Denison University was, but I was on a college campus. And I got to stay there for 4 days. And I'm in these rooms and I'm watching how we go through the food line. I'm just a young kid. I think I was going into the 8th grade. I was a really great athlete. And all the Kiwanis told me was make sure they know we were there. And so I was a camp MVP.
Great.
And I got the chance by winning and being the camp MVP, I got to meet Wilma Rudolph. And so it was one of those situations where I saw what I wanted to do when I got of age, and I couldn't wait to go to college because that meant I had my own room. I'd have my own bed, things of those natures. And for a young black kid coming out of Columbus, Ohio, who, at that time, we had a 3-bedroom home for me and my 2 sisters and my mom. It was like we shared space. Now I had my own space. And a lot of our kids, I can tell you, we've sent about 13 kids into the National Football League. 100% of the girls that we've had come through the program over the last 10 years have all gone to college or graduating. A lot of them have come back to become counselors, to work for us in the summer. They all talk about the fact that they never had that experience in life before, and they saw it as a positive reflection of something they wanted to do later in life. And so it was just, that's why I wanted it to be on a college campus. From day one, I said, I want these kids to get an experience that I got when I went to that Fellowship of Christian Athletes camp. And I wanted them to just see that experience. And it was just funny because the first time we did the camp there, we had about 30 parents who literally walked up to us and says, I've never been on this campus, and we live 3 minutes away. That's how close a campus can be to a community. And your people, because you never had that part in your life. I was the first college graduate in my family. And believe me, to me, I talk about that because my first cousin is the first Black Supreme Court judge in the state of Alabama.
Wow.
And she finished a year after I did, but it was one of those things where I just went, instead of going 4 years, I graduated in 3 years from Notre Dame and then started law school. So it's one of those things where I just happened to graduate ahead of her. She graduated the semester after I graduated. But, I laugh because, they've written books about her in Alabama now. And the fact she was the first African-American female to graduate from University of Alabama's law school. So it was one of those things where.
That's a movie.
Yeah, I mean, well, you know what? I tell Sid, she's got a lot of history. We got to, I joke because my family name in Alabama is Petway, and that's a huge Alabama name. Huh. And whenever you say you're a Petway, everybody's, well, you related, and it's just like so many of us. And every time I go down for a family reunion, I find out I'm a relative of somebody else. So it's one of those kind of things. Her dad was a big entrepreneur. I tell people it's funny, when I see the movie Selma, I see my family. Wow. Because when you see them walk across the bridge in Selma from the white area to the black side, there's a gas station and a grocery store and a cabin that sits there, and that was my Uncle Son's. He was probably one of the first entrepreneur African Americans in that area, but he had a moonshine place. He had the farm. Everything was in that convenience store. Sure. So you could, and we laugh because the police officers used to come over there to buy his moonshine and take it back on the other side. But when I see them walk across that bridge, I think about my family that was from there, and that's where my heritage is from. And we chat on email a lot and joke with her. We actually had to cancel our family reunion this summer because of the pandemic. But it was going to be special to see a lot of us because now a lot of us are at that retirement age. She's retired, and she was a circuit court after she retired, and now she's done. And it's funny because her first son is the assistant basketball coach at University of Alabama, and she adopted a son as well. And he was a Caucasian kid that she adopted. So it's a diverse family. And when I see all the things, I don't know the history of them a lot because I'm from Ohio. My parents left Alabama and moved to Ohio. They didn't want to go back. But my dad eventually went back. He's back in Mobile. When I'm back there, I see a lot of family. It's just one of those kind of things. It's just amazing that, what we're going through now is it's shocking and it's amazing all at the same time.
Well, you can go back and have another reunion and reflect on all of that in a more powerful way. I mean, but you come from a powerful stock of people, my goodness, with CEOs, entrepreneurs, everybody. And it's amazing. But what you're saying is it's exposure. A lot of these kids do not have exposure. I volunteer for a lot of different programs, a lot of the Boys and Girls Clubs of America. And it's just astounding. They just don't know what they don't know. And it's not an even playing field as much as people say it. Oh, anyone can make something of themselves. And yes, they can. But it's not even, and it's not fair when it comes to competing in college. They don't have the background. And
it's a lot there.
And education is huge. And you offer all of that. And by the way, I would love to be part of the PASS program as an actress, model, and former NFL cheerleader.
You are?
Yeah, I would love to be part of the PASS program and help with the kids.
Well, you just mentioned something that I probably didn't tell you, but the Boys and Girls Club of San Bernardino, we just took that over. So we're in the process of cleaning up the building, making some additions to it. It's going to be kind of interesting because we probably won't be able to become a traditional Boys and Girls Club for probably about a year because of the pandemic. I've already put a proposal into the city of San Bernardino to open our doors to the school district. So right now, the proposal is to give our building. We will do the teaching and we'll staff it and do all that. Wow. But we will be there because with this new block schedule that many school districts are going to go to, it's going to leave about 50% of their kids either at home, on the streets, or unsupervised. And so we don't want that to happen in San Bernardino with our kids. So we're in the process of opening our doors, and churches are opening their doors. People who can do educational and supervision programs, we can probably house about 110 kids. Normally, we probably could do it close to 250, but with the pandemic and the social distancing, splatter shields, and all those things, we're going to probably look at trying to help with about 105 kids a day.
Amazing. And I was devastated to hear that. How cool that you had set up a program for them to practice at the Las Vegas Raiders practice field. And
it's not over yet.
Still in there.
Well, I tell you what, because the pandemic and because Cal State San Bernardino pretty much has closed and not only did they close their campus for this year, it's probably going to be closed to us for next year. So what we did in turn is I took what I had, the resources. The districts have all funded us, supported us, assist us. So we have a total of about 7 to 8 schools right now that we're going to bus on a luxury liner, put them up in the hotel, feed them, do our mentoring programs in the evening. But the Raiders are going to host what's called the 11 On Initiative, which is a 7-on-7 program and lineman program where they can come over. We'll be at the Raiders facility. The Raiders will do the whole football scheme of it. And then the life skill side of it, after 7 o'clock, they'll come back to the hotel, have dinner, and then we'll do our educational part. And then the nice thing for me is I'll get a chance to offer that to some of the Las Vegas schools. If they want to be a part of it, we're going to allow them to come to it as well. So we'll do our what we call our college prep program. We have a mother who sent 5 kids to Oregon, Arizona State, and Oregon State on Division I scholarships. She gives parents as well as kids an opportunity to ask her questions. She's got a lot of answers. She's, when you send 5 kids over the 11-year period timestamp, you see 2 decades worth of knowledge that comes with her. So now families and parents and kids can ask her the necessary questions that they don't tell you during recruiting. Then we got the NC2A coming out with the clearinghouse to go over really the hardest part of really going to colleges, or why the NC2A created this clearinghouse requirements. They don't do it for any other students, but student athletes have to meet certain requirements just to go to college. Right. The average student doesn't have to have 2/3 of these things. People talk about athletes not having education, not having brains. This will tell you this a lie, because some of these things, had they been around when I came out of high school, I don't think I would have met the standards. They're just very hard standards to meet, and sometimes it hurts a lot of kids.
Besides the fact that they're not getting paid, and they've got to buy people food.
Yeah, because I hate to say it, I'm a public school advocate. I work with the National Public School Administration. I believe in the public education that you can get from public schools, because it's really about the teachers and the mentors you have around you. But some public schools never will have the opportunity to meet some of these requirements. And so the Catholic schools and the private schools and those parochial schools, they have these programs, or really wealthy communities, they meet the requirements. And so it limits a lot of kids who could have otherwise went and, could have got a scholarship somewhere and did good. Now they're limited to having to go to a junior college for 2 years. And if they really don't like it, it takes their lust away from school. So we want these kids to know before they, get to their senior year what those requirements are. And then we got, the NFL guys, we call it the Player 101 program, where they get a chance to talk to guys like myself, Andre Reed, Tim Brown, Jerome Bettis. We've had a gamut of guys come and spend their time at the camp and answer these guys everyday questions. Because a lot of things that you and I would probably take for granted, athletes don't take them for granted. And when you got somebody who's already walked in your steps, there's the perfect time to get the answers to questions that the average college student will never think about. The average professional will never think about, because I hate to say it, it's just on a different level.
Absolutely. And it's real. They share the hardships, the real Fort Knox of what it actually is. Oh, that's just incredible. No, but I would love to be part of any kind of a program to help you as a speaker in any way as well, from working in entertainment in Hollywood, or just anything I can offer on the female side.
I'll take you up on that. Boom, you hit it.
Oh, I would love to.
I'm there.
Wait till I'm off the crutches.
I'm going to say, how you doing? How are you doing?
Oh, it's just.
Were you trying to do your own stunts?
Let's talk about you. It's one of those, we'll talk offline. It shouldn't have happened. And it's.
All right.
Hashtag lawsuit. That's okay. I'll tell you later on that. So, with this, the fact that there's been some challenges, what would you suggest for, let's just say, a single parent mother who has 2 or 3 young sons and they're all athletes and we're lacking in the money, we're lacking in resources. What could they do? I mean, you have a wonderful book called Athletic Wisdom for Students. Would that be something they could buy or something they could get involved
in? Well, it's definitely something they can buy. You can go to our website, athletesforlife.org, and it'll probably be coming back on Amazon. Of course, like every book writing situation, sometimes you like your publisher, sometimes you don't like your publisher.
Sure.
I end up not liking my publishers towards the end, so I've kind of pulled it off of the Amazon, but our contract ended about a year ago, so now I'm getting ready to put it back on a kind of different series, a little bit more, maybe even a hardback. But that's one avenue. I tell people all the time, don't forget the best resource that all of them have. That guy who's coaching your son in high school football, he's giving up a part of his life to do that. And when I was a kid growing up, my high school football, track, as well as my basketball coach, they were mentors for me. I found solace in the fact that my dad, him and my mom split when I was probably going into about the 4th grade, 3rd grade. And so you always look for male role models. And for me, those were hard to find in the inner city. You know, when I'm on a basketball court and the guys are over on the corner shooting dice, you know, I didn't have a lot of role models that I was just going to pluck from out in front of me. I had a guy who, believe it or not, he ended up spending his whole life in prison. He lived right behind me. He was the big gang leader in my town. And he told me when I was a kid, this ain't the life for you. He said, you got a gift. Don't lose it. And I remember Monty always saying those things to me. And, you know, bless his heart, when he got out of prison, he ended up having diabetes and all that thing. His life was cut short. He passed by his 45th birthday. But his brother Steph was like a little brother for me. And I saw his way through high school. And, you know, I made sure he got his college degree and stuck with him. But it was one of those things where those coaches are mentors. Those coaches were the role models for me, as well as my dad. My dad was always there. He's my best friend. But those mentors that I had around me is what I took treasure in. And so when I grew up, and then part of the reason Athletes for Life is here, you know, I was a big, humongous advocate for Just Say No. I worked with Nancy Reagan. I had my program in New York with Governor Cuomo for Just Say No, and for Governor Cuomo's Athletes Against Drug Driving and Drug Prevention. And so a lot of people always say, well, how did you start Athletes for Life? I lost my best friend. You know, Stacy Turan was a dear friend of mine. He died in a drunk driving accident during our training camp. I was with the Rams. He was with the Raiders.
Oh, no.
All-pro defensive back. He cut his life short, and he knew better. And he didn't have his seatbelt on, things of those nature. So it started out as an anti-drunk driving and drug prevention program. I've never drank. I've never cared to take illicit drugs. I don't care what the states see as a, you know, medicinal opportunity. You know, I know what it did to a lot of the kids in my neighborhood when I grew up, and it just led them down a dark path. So that was something I kept out of my life. And I told people, those are the commitments you have to make in life. There are always sacrifices to achieve anything great in life, they're going to be hard sacrifices. My sacrifices were to make good decisions, smart decisions, and stay away from things that were going to ruin my mind. And so those were drugs. So Athletes for Life was started from that premise, and it's grown from there. But it grew from there because I remembered those mentors who were in my life, who showed me to be a strong African-American man, to be an intelligent African-American male, to be a God-fearing and spiritual person. So those were all the things that were a part of my life that shaped me. And so you'll see the George Gilchrist's, the Richie Bowden's. These are the mentors that were, as well as the female. I tell people all the time, I had a teacher named Mrs. Letts and Mrs. Boots. Those were two of my hardest teachers. And Mrs. Boots, I can remember her slamming the door on Dan Devine when he poked his head in to come and recruit me. And she said, hey, if he don't pass this class, he won't be at Notre Dame.
Good for her, Miss
Boots. Ohio State. So you get your head out of my class and you'll get him when I'm done. And it's just funny because she came to probably every home game I had with my mom. She drove with my mom to every game. She was a part of our family. And Mrs. Letts, she was a part of my family. I think of all those strong female male that go along with my mom and dad. It's the mentors that are going to be around your kids. So those parents that don't have the money, that don't have the father in the life on a 24/7 basis, or doesn't have the mother in their life 24/7, don't make it seem like it's always just the dad. Take advantage of those mentors who are at those high schools, because they really do. They look at you as a son. They're proud about the things that you do in life, and they're there for you, because I'm just telling you, they don't make a lot of money being a high school coach. No. Maybe $1,000. It's when you're talking about a public school. So those guys are given a part of their life when they have families of their own. And I lost a coach about 2 weeks ago, and it was kind of funny. I was reading a remark that his daughter talked about. It was Brian Bullock at Notre Dame. He never had a son. He had 4 girls. And she says that she thought she had 100 brothers because of how much he talked about his boys.
Wow.
And so she said, y'all, all of you guys were brothers for me. I saw you guys as brothers, not as, guys who played at Notre Dame because of Coach Booth. Sure. So that's how these guys are. That's what a coach is. He gives up a lot of his life to facilitate mentoring, coaching, but really teaching. His whole life's about being a teacher.
Oh, I guess I'm just so proud of, you could have easily just made the money and gone partying and do what a lot of athletes do, and you really took this to heart. And with that, it's got to be frustrating because you are just a true class act, like a complete diamond.
Well, thank you.
And being among the people that kind of screw up on the team, like if someone beats their girlfriend or someone gets in a DUI, how do you handle that? And how does the team handle that? Do you guys gather around and just, kind of hold them up? Like, you screwed up, but let's help the PR here. Or do you shut them?
I'm going to tell you this, and you got to remember, I played in the 80s, and I don't know how much it's changed in the 90s or 2000s and 2010s. Now we're in the 2020s. I tell people this all the time. In my life, I've had 5 friends. I got a handful. I got a lot of compadres. I got a lot of associates. I got a lot of partners. You see the guys who are your true friends. You generally, I got guys I didn't get along with that I played with. For whatever the reason, he could have been a guy who didn't really care for African Americans, and it could have been anything. He didn't like the fact that I was making more money than him, or it didn't make a difference what the reason. You got friends and you got enemies, and that's in every workplace in America. You have to learn to work together. It's kind of like where we are as a society right now. I don't necessarily have to love you, but I got to respect you at some point in life for what you do and what you might do that is going to cross my path at some point in my life. Mm-hmm. So if a guy makes a mistake, generally a lot of times the team has, I hate to say it, they hit you where it really hurts. They find you. Believe it or not, these guys who when you lose a paycheck in the National Football League today, it's not like when I lost a check, I lose a check back in 1985, it might be 10,000. To a guy today, it might be $1 million.
Right.
So it's a waking up calling. That's how the NFL tends to deal with problems and issues. But on the flip side of that, because my dad was a minister, we always have spiritual counseling with any NFL team. So you have what's called a team chaplain. Then you got guys that are on the team who are good at counseling. I will tell you that the guys that were dear and close to me, who I'm still close with from the teams that I played, and we still talk. They're your friends. You have to fall on those friends, and you got to be prepared to listen to the things that they're going to tell you. Most guys don't like hearing the good news because sometimes that good news is what they consider bad news. Because I tell people all the time, the good news that I get is always from the Word, and it's generally going to be telling you straightforward what you need to do to change your life. And sometimes that's bad news to a guy who doesn't want to give up those things. But friends do that for each other. The teams handle it through different channels that the team's going to handle it. But I tell people all the time, it's really hard to tell a man or a grown woman how to live their life.
Right.
So you can give all the advice you want. It takes that person to want to accept the advice that's been given to him. I can't tell you I made a mistake that was going to be costly in life. I tried to make good decisions, and God, thank God he was always on my side. I was able to make decisions that led me down the straight and narrow and didn't lead me towards, being arrested and jailed and things of that nature, or drugs. Those are going to be mistakes that people do make because those are common mistakes in our life. Those are what we call human mistakes. But at the same time, we have to have human compassion and know that sometimes one mistake can be corrected. Now, it's to the guy who continues to making the same mistake. And generally, he finds himself a new career. And the guys, I hate to say it this way, but as a teammate of that guy who continues to make mistakes, you start to lose trust in that guy. Right. Trust is the biggest thing you can have in sport.
Even on the field.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's the biggest thing about pro sports. I have to know and trust the guy who's next to me. I don't have to like him, don't have to love him, don't even have to really sometimes care about him. But I respect that I got to depend on him to do his job. And they hold me responsible for my position, and I hold them responsible for theirs. He's being paid. This is your job. So I shouldn't have to ask you to do anything that's your job. I expect you want to do it for the best of your ability, because the better you are at your job, the more money you'll be making from that team. And so that's the way, that's the way people, it's not a rocket science to be in the pros of any sport, because it's really, people tend to forget all the time, that really is my job. It's the greatest job in the world. I'm just going to tell you, it's the greatest job in the world. I wouldn't change anything about pro sports. The injuries, the pains, people talk about the concussions. I might have had one. I never was diagnosed with one concussion in all my years of playing. I think my head's really hard. I don't know. But I wouldn't change anything. I wouldn't tell my kids not to play it. My son played it all the way through high school. He was actually due to be in Brazil right now. And he was trying to play American football and teach American football in Brazil because they have a league.
Wow.
But pandemic shuts all that away. But the long and the short of it, I wouldn't change anything. But a lot of times people have to remember that this is a job. And we look at it as that. A lot of people don't see it as that because they see this kid's game being played by 20-year-old kids. And, well, they could be doing something else in life. I'd do anything. Some people say they will do anything in life to play football. But trust me, it takes a commitment, and that's why my hats are off to anybody. I tell people one thing, it's a real great eye-opener if you're a kid. I tell kids, just look at me, and you're seeing a really limited thing. And when I say a limited thing, there are only 45,000 guys in the history of the National Football League. 45,000. That's if you played one down or didn't play. If you never played, you're not in that group. But one down gets you in that group. It's only 45,000, and it's been here now over 100 years.
You're royalty, and you can't take that back.
And I tell them, I said, so the first thing I want you to understand about professional athletes, you're not going to be one. And I say that to them right off the top, because less than 1% will ever make it to this dream. And that's really what it is. I'm fortunate that God allowed me to live my dreams. But that's the beauty about life. He allows you to have so many diverse dreams. now I'm living a second dream. My second dream is that I was passionate about helping kids, and I wanted to do that with all my heart and desire. And that's what I'm getting the chance to do with Athletes for Life. That's all I can tell them. I'm one of those very few men that actually walk this earth, and I tell them that probably billions have dreamed of playing football on Sunday or on Monday night. And I'm actually one of those 45 that you can look and say, I know a guy who got a chance to live his dream. Now, what dream do you have that you want to live?
Absolutely. But I love that you tell them, again, like even for acting jobs, like people have asked me, how do you get into acting? What is it? I said, don't quit. If you don't love, like sadomasochism, basically, quit. Because it's like, you've got it. It's just like that. And that is testicular fortitude to stay in it, all the extreme just distractions and everything like that. And you've got to work for it. Like even Kobe, also God-given gifts just like you. But he worked his butt off, and he was there earlier than everybody else and stayed later.
It is a commitment like no other.
Yeah.
I tell people, I says, I tell people all the time, they say, well, man, I'd give anything to do this. I'd give anything. And I says, remember, you got to take the good with the bad. Mm-hmm. When the cameras aren't supposed to be there, do you turn off do you generally turn off your sensors?
Sure.
Because I said, think of all the things you see in this world. You don't get to live the same life as everybody else. You got to be a lot better.
And more responsible. People are looking up to you. You're on a pedestal.
Yeah. I tell people this all the time. And here's where me and Charles Barkley have a difference,
He's not vegan.
Chuck ain't vegan, no.
No.
But, he made the greatest comment years ago that people always, they love it. They says, where he says, I'm not a role model. And, Nike did the campaign. And here's the difference in life where I think he knows now, but we are role models. And I don't say that all athletes are role models, but I do tell when you are 87% of the league is African American, and African Americans make up something like 15% of the world numbers. We make up such a small. You put yourself in a very limit where not some eyes are looking at you. All eyes.
All eyes.
And the things that you do in life do matter. And I know the things that I do in life, whether the camera's on me or not. I joke because we have a language that's a little different. A locker room language is very much different.
I love locker room language. I hear it all.
Open language, and so I have to be mindful of that all the time in my life.
Right.
I remember when I had my first kid, and I think I was probably my second year with the Rams. You go through rough times in your life, and I can remember coming home one time, and my daughter was just crying or something, and my ex-wife looked at me and she says, you're bringing that home with you. And I was like, what do you mean I'm bringing that home with you? She says, you're bringing your locker home. You're talking like you're in the locker room. And so it was an eye opener for her, because all of a sudden I had a mind that I was in charge of. And I was going to influence every element of that child's life. And so I literally came into practice the next day, because I was the only running back who carried the ball. We had a one-back system. And so we had 5 guys sitting in a room, and the coach, and I can remember looking at Gil Haskin, and I remember stopping our film practice right in the middle of the practice. I just got up, turned the lights on. Everybody was asleep except for me, because the only person was there. They jumped off the floor like, whoa. And I said, okay, starting today, I pulled a little jar. I put a jar, and I said, anytime we curse, $100 goes into this jar. And they looked at me and said, man, I said, look. I said,
wow.
I'm taking this room home with me. And it's got to stop. And I said, we have to make a concerted effort. And my coach looked at me, and says, you know what? And his wife's name was Kathy. Says, Kathy said the same thing to me.
Unbelievable. And that is not an easy thing to do. That's
And
not a popularity contest.
it takes concerted efforts.
Wow.
And so I tell people all the time, I understand that I'm a role model. And so, and I chose that position because, as I told you, when I was a kid growing up, those mentors were my role models. And they chose those positions and they knew it. And so I was a representative of them in my neighborhood. So when I went to Notre Dame, I can remember I was the first public school kid from the city of Columbus to get a scholarship to Notre Dame. They'd had kids from the Catholic schools, earn the scholarship, but no public school kid had ever gotten a scholarship.
Congratulations.
This was 1980. I mean, 1980. Yep. Notre Dame had probably been around 15, 20 years where they'd integrated and blacks were playing at Notre Dame. So I felt special. And all I can tell you is I remember sitting down with my dad and my mom. And they said, it's kind of like that Spider-Man moment, with great, great, I remember something like with great something comes great responsibility. With
great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah, it comes with great responsibility. And my mother basically and dad, I can remember them saying, you're representing Columbus, Ohio now. And I was like, what am I representing Columbus for? This is me. She says,
the way you were raised.
You're the first one. Remember that. You're the first kid from a public school who's gotten a chance to go to this pristine university. Make everybody proud.
They're going to be watching you to screw up.
And open the door for somebody else in the future.
Yeah.
And I can remember when I got to Notre Dame, just to tell you how funny it was. I was one of two public school kids on that entire 100-man roster.
Amazing.
Every other kid went to either a parochial school or a Catholic school. Most of them were Catholics. Probably 80% of them came from Catholic schools.
Mm-hmm.
And
how about Don Bosco? Don Bosco Prep out east. A lot of those types.
It's kind of funny. I remember when Don Bosco was a basketball power back in the early 70s and 80s.
Oh,
Their football came on late. So we didn't have anybody from Don Bosco.
Those kids are hardcore.
Mount Carmel in Illinois, always Joliet Catholic, had kids from there. Believe it or not, we probably had 20 kids from Illinois. East St. Louis, Illinois, Assumption Catholic School. It's just funny. A lot of kids from Illinois. Notre Dame recruited Illinois very heavily, and they recruited Texas. So we had a lot of kids from Texas, Illinois, California, and of course Ohio. And all of the 10 kids from Ohio, I think Ohio had the most, was probably 10. 8 of them came from Moeller High School.
No.
So all of them came from Jerry Fouts' Moeller High School, big Catholic school there. And then there was me, there was Scott Grooms. We had another gentleman, his name was Stacy Turan, who was like my brother with the Raiders. He went to Broad Ripple High School in Indianapolis. But me and Stacy were the only 2 public school kids. And Scott went to he's from Miami Trace. It was the only high school they had in the whole county. So it was pretty
good
well.
For him. They made a statue of him.
The same high school that Art Schleicher came from.
Wow.
Not to use that name lightly, but
sure.
He followed Art Schleicher, and me and Scott became the best of friends. We both thought we were going to Ohio State, and then we decided to go to Notre Dame together. So you have common bonds like that. We're still close to the very day. Probably talk 5-6 times a month.
Well, what a challenge. I mean, you're up against the best of the best from the private schools who, let's just say, probably have a little bit of attitude. Did they ever look down upon you like, oh, they're public school kids or anything like that?
Well, I'm going to tell you, you say what's the greatest challenge I had was the fact that academically I wasn't prepared. And you have to understand and you have to know those things coming in.
They're prepped for college, though. Public schools.
Well, it wasn't it wasn't about being prepared for college. I mean, we had guys that were Rhodes Scholars. I probably had 5 guys on my team that qualified as Rhodes Scholars.
Wow.
One of them won it. Dave DeBushka won it when I was like a sophomore. And one of my teammates, who's a close friend, an African-American gentleman from Las Cruces, New Mexico. I didn't know where that was when I was in college. But Rod Bone was a 4.0. He went through some emotional changes his senior year, or he would have won the Rhodes Scholar. He was an engineering student.
Wow.
So for me, it wasn't necessarily the going, the college, that whole thing about being prepared. I was prepared for college. I wasn't prepared for the competition of college.
Yes.
And there's difference because most kids think, oh, I just go and I stay eligible and I'm done with college. I get through college.
Don't have to open a book.
When you go to a school like a Notre Dame, like a Harvard, a Yale, a Cornell, a Columbia, a Stanford, it's not just about, I didn't know what a curve grading scale was.
Sure.
I didn't know public schools don't use a curve. They use a standardized straight grading tool.
Yep.
And so all of a sudden, I go to college and, you get, 2 questions, you have 100 questions and I get 6 wrong. And I assume I got 96 or 94, excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
Out of 100 questions, I got a 94 on the test. I got an A.
And you get a B-?
And you might get a C.
Right. Oh, yeah.
And I'll be like, whoa, time out.
Uh-huh.
And I can remember that was the hardest thing for me because I remember when I went in there, I went in on the pre-professional. They didn't have law school, med school. They didn't have that when I first came into Notre Dame. So you had to take what was called pre-professional. And that meant everybody had to take chemistry. And we had a very hard professor named Professor Emil Hoffman. And he gave you, believe me when I say this, 7 questions. That was the test. And this was back before there were computers, but we had to log onto a computer and you take a test.
And it was not A, B, C, D, multiple choice. It was mathematical.
No.
No?
It wasn't that hard. It was, you did but you had, the answer was given. You had to formulate the answer to know which one of them was right. So it was a multiple choice, but you still had to formulate to get the right answer. You could guess if you did.
I remember organic chemistry from college.
I remember taking his test the first time. And I'm in there, it's 50 people in the lab. And I got the test back. Oh, man, I was smiling. I missed 2 out of 7. F.
No, because some of those nerds are getting 7s out of 7s.
Hey, got home. Yeah. So the next week, he calls me up after the class. And I got 1 wrong. And he called me up to the class and said, Mr. Bell, I know you're listed as pre-professional. I'm not sure what you're looking to accomplish, but
because you got 1 wrong?
You failed 2 tests. And I said, I failed? I said, I only missed 1. He says,
oh my God.
You were the only person that missed 1. And
other people have no lives. You are a football player.
But it's not even that. I had football players that got 707. It wasn't even that. It was understanding the competition that was in the classroom
on that
was
level.
Even more competitive than what's on the field.
Sure.
And so the next time I got in there and I took it, I missed 1 again. And he said, I think you should probably change. You know what I told him? You don't have to worry. I said, let me give you the Greg Bell lesson here. I'm going to play on Sunday and I'm going to make millions. I said, but I don't know what a curve schedule is. I said, but it sure in the hell is not for me. And I said, so I'm going to pass class and I'm going to work twice as hard because I know I had to work twice as hard as every other kid there. If I could have been these kids who only had to study, go to class, party, I would have been a 4.0 student at Notre Dame.
For sure.
I finished Notre Dame like at a 3.25, I want to say, and I graduated in 3 years, not 4. And I tell people, you don't understand what a student athlete was in the 80s. It was such a hard road for me back in the 80s that the NCAA had to change the rules to make it limit the amount of time you could keep a kid. I would get up, be at an 8 o'clock class, 9, 10, 11. I was done by noon, at the school for lunch. Then I had to be at the team meeting at 1 for film class and on the field at 3. We got off the field at 6, dinner before 7, 7:30, I had to be back into a team meeting till 9 o'clock. So I had between 9 o'clock and 7 o'clock in the morning to finish 4 test studies, this, that, and the other. I said, if I could have eliminated all that time in between, I think I could have been a better student. But I did the best with what I had.
With
and
all
I said,
that, you still got a 3 Notre Dame.
And I told him, I said, you can keep the curve for whatever you want. I said, I will stay eligible and I will pass out of this school. And I made it a point. I never took less than 18 hours a semester. I took 15 hours in the summer, just so I make sure I got out of that university. I didn't go there to be a student. I hate to tell, I became a student when I got there. I went there as an athlete that was planning on playing on Sunday. That was my goal. You
happen to be incredibly smart too.
And I just happened to learn. I can't tell you, I won't lie and tell you I was incredibly smart. I became smarter being around people of like-minded. Sure. And that's what I try and explain to my kids, that when you say you have friends, those are people who have like-minded. You're like-minded in your regimen, in your goals, in your visions, in your dreams. You're like-minded. And then you find somebody that you really want to put that, because that's an endearment term in my life. You know, for me to call you a friend, when I mean the term friend, that's an endearment. And like I say, I've generally only called about 5 or 6 guys in my lifetime that friend. And it's something that's so endearing, I'd do anything for them. You know, it's one of those kind of things. So that's another lesson that I try and get kids to understand. Everybody's not your friend. That's kind of what I tried to explain to you about going into the national football, being an actress in Hollywood. Everybody's not your friend.
And if everyone's your friend, you're doing something wrong. That means you're trying to appease everybody, probably going against your own morals and ethics, because it happens all the time. But I guess I'm just, even that professor right there, obviously he had his own issues. He was probably, he probably jealous.
He didn't want me in that class.
He didn't. And he was probably jealous of the fact that he was going somewhere. And you went to law school. So he can just,
I tell people, I love Emo. He was some people. I saw kids, and believe me on this when I tell you this, I saw kids have nervous breakdowns because if they didn't pass his class with 100%, they weren't going to be a doctor. I'm like, huh?
Oh, God.
Where did you come up with that?
Like a really bad
that was ingrained in their parents, because a lot of legacy kids go back through Notre Dame. I went with a lot of kids whose parents, whose grandparents went to Notre Dame. And so I tell people, we're in a time today, and I just make light of it. When you say the term legacy, it means so much. It really does.
It's very stressful on the person too.
It can be stressful on a person, but it creates an opportunity that, in the times where we are, I didn't have a legacy when I went to Notre Dame. And I wanted to create one. And, my daughter got accepted to Notre Dame. She chose to go to Howard University.
Oh.
And I'm thankful that Howard gave her a diverse view of the world.
Sure.
Notre Dame was not very diverse.
No.
And I'm not going to say it was good or it was bad. It was a great experience for me.
But very tunnel vision in certain cases.
But, it is what you get out of it. And I told people, I've never had a job in my life because I've always loved what I did. I love what I do today. I love what I did more than anything in this world.
Absolutely.
And so if you love it with that much passion, it's never work. And so my daughter, she had a passion that she wanted to be a little bit more diverse. She was born and raised in Santa Barbara, California. Very limited diversity. It was the area that I chose because I didn't want to live in the same area that I grew up. I can tell you, I don't hear gunshots here. I don't hear sirens all the time.
And you give her better opportunities.
And it gave her more opportunities to grow and to see the world. She has since she graduated from college at 18 years old. She got her master's by the time she was 20. She was working in the State Department, left and worked in Mozambique with the Peace Corps for 2 years.
Oh, wow.
And now she's back in the State Department in D.C. Her life's in D.C. now. She has no interest in California. And, she loves, her mind grew.
Yep.
And I got 2 kids who live here in California, and getting them to leave the Central Coast is the hard thing, because this is what their comfort level is.
Oh, right.
I left Columbus, Ohio when I was 17 years old and started college on my birthday. My mother dropped me off on August 1st, 1980 at Notre Dame, and I've never been back to Columbus ever since.
She must have been so proud of you. Wow, I can't imagine.
I was her only son.
Yep.
And I was her baby.
Sure.
So she's going to be proud of me no matter what.
Incredible. Oh,
but
my gosh.
She dropped me off there, and she basically told me, "Don't come home till you're done." And that was she wanted me to graduate. My sister, my oldest sister, was valedictorian of everything she's ever done. She graduated from University of Houston, but just an interesting story. She got pregnant when she was at Denison. She went to Denison University, private school in Ohio, very private, pristine school in Ohio. And so she decided to stop going back to college. So she went to work for a company called DCSC. Most people who don't have never heard of DCSC, but it's part of NASA.
Oh.
My sister was I'm just telling you, she was a phenomenal whiz with numbers.
So she could split the atom. She's an aeronautical space engineer.
No, she was accounting numbers. She knew numbers.
Wow.
And any formula if it's in numbers, she could calculate it. My sister worked for NASA, DCSC, for 40 years. No, 43 years. 30 years after being at NASA and DCSC, now she's working for NASA in Clear Lake, Houston, Texas.
Unbelievable. But that could have gone the other way
No,
had she not had the upbringing like you guys.
Hold on, I got to tell you this story. She's working for NASA, and they're shutting NASA down. They look at the books and says, "Well, where's Deborah Russell? Where's Deborah Russell? We want to talk to her about the books." She says she's been doing them for 18, 20 years.
Right.
They look and they say, "We don't see your certified public accountant license. Where's your number?" And she says, "I don't have one. Why? Does it matter?" And the guy goes like, "Yeah, it does matter." My sister, at the age of 42, went back to the University of Houston, got her bachelor's degree in a year and a half, and graduated and got her accounting in 4 years. She did all of that in 4 years. At the same time, here's the funny part, her son was graduating from the engineering school at the University of Houston. They walked across the stage, number 1 and number 2 in the University of Houston's class.
I mean, can we share your DNA molecules, please?
Look here, I wish I had her brain, because I would have probably walked across the stage at Notre Dame, number 1.
Yeah, because I'm sure you're lacking brain cells.
She's one of the smartest persons I've ever met. Her son, who not only became an engineer, he decided to marry a young lady from, I want to say she's from Pakistan. So their religion did not agree with his job. He was a missile guidance expert for Lockheed in New Jersey. So they didn't believe in war. He had to give up his career as an engineer. He went back and became a doctor. Now he's a doctor.
Okay.
Those two my sister and her son are peas of the same pot. I mean, they're from the same pot. But I try and keep people those examples, because it just talks about a commitment. Mm-hmm. It talks about the excellence of education, and the will to continue to be successful in whatever you choose. I tell my kids all the time, I don't care what you want to be in life. There are garbage men that have more respect than doctors.
Absolutely. So. And they should all be treated the same way with respect.
And I only say that because my foundation was started back in 1989. And the first person who stepped up to support my foundation was a gentleman by the name of Kurt Gowler. And Kurt was a janitor. But Kurt had a vision in his mind that he was going to be the best janitor he could. he rented an office space for me and my partner in Anaheim, California. And before we knew it, Kurt was sponsoring my foundation because he had grown a individual plumbing service, a janitorial service, to one of the largest government janitorial service. He cleaned all the Air Force bases, probably 7 of the largest hospitals in California.
Wow.
The guy became a multi-millionaire.
Good for him.
And I used to do my programs to kids, and we come in and have career and we go through all the different things and say, oh, okay, who in this room wants to be a janitor? Nobody's hands would go up. Who in here would like to be a nanny? Nobody. Who in here wants to be a basketball player? Oh, who wants to be a movie star? You know, we do those things. And I said, well, let's go back to the first career. How many of you guys would like to be janitors? And they're like, man, I ain't cleaning no toilet. And then Kurt would step up and go, well,
I'd rather do that than nanny.
No. He said, let me ask this question. He said, how many of you here would like to make $100 million a year? Everybody. He says, if I could give you $100 million a year, how many of you would say, I'm going to do that career? I don't care. All of them said, he said, well, I clean toilets for a living.
You're looking at a janitor.
My company does over $100 million a year. And he says, and when I first met Greg Bell, he was renting me an office, basically saying, and we said, what do you do? He's like, well, I'm going to get the account to clean this building. Whoa, time out. Can you afford this office?
Right.
And it's just so funny. Kurt was a great believer in me and the passion of working with kids. But he made sure that they understood, don't allow a career choice to define you.
Or a misconception in society.
It's the greatest misconception because we all do a job for a compensation. No matter what that job is, you want to be compensated fairly and equally and to the greatest of every level. And he took a job that most people would run away from, cleaning toilets, throwing out trash. So he made it when he created NMI, he was physically doing it himself. But by the time those kids met him, he had been in business for 20 years. He had something like 6,000 employees. And now he's still a janitor. I don't care how you look at it. But he owns the company and he doesn't actually have to work every day. But he wasn't too dirty. He said no job was too dirty for me to do. Wow. And I took it and he said I was going to be the best person I could be at it. So I tell them, whatever career you choose, make it yours. Absolutely. Put the same passion in life that you want to be successful, put it into that career, and you'll make that career successful. And
what a man of integrity. I can't imagine. That's such a good lesson.
No matter what that job is.
Absolutely. I mean, you have just a plethora of knowledge and tools to help these kids. And it is devastating that this COVID is hurting that, but I believe in you. And like you said, the Raiders thing is not done. How can people get involved?
Well,
as far as if they want to help or get their kids, or is it not really that?
You never ask a 501c3 how you can get involved.
Right, exactly. No, money. Show me the money.
Go to the website and donate as much as you can.
Totally, touche.
But I tell people all the time, what's really special for us right now, like I said, we're taking over the 1180 West 9th Street facility in San Bernardino, California, which has been the home of the Boys and Girls Club since 1960. But we're going to open those doors, and that's our way of being a community partner.
Okay.
The school districts right now, they are looking for community partners. COVID-19 has changed not only our normacy, but it's also changed the requirements that are going to be necessary to educate your kids into the future.
Right.
This legacy that we're trying to make sure we keep as that word legacy is that these kids don't fall behind. They're already behind, and we're still trying to catch them up. Mm-hmm. But even the public, private, parochial, I don't care what it is.
All behind.
They're going to fall behind because one is the social distancing limits the number of kids who can be on the campus at one given time. Mm-hmm. And then in our world, even if you don't have to be a two-family income, a lot of them are. And because he or she wants to continue the life that they created for themselves. And unfortunately, we live in probably the second, or if not the most expensive state in the world. A mortgage is going to be a minimum of $3,000 a month for a lot of these families, because their homes are worth, they're really worth about $100,000 in the Midwest, but out here in California, they're $500,000.
Absolutely.
So they have to have that income coming in. And now the crazy part is they've been out for 5 months already.
Yep.
And now we got to get these kids back employed. And, what we're trying to do for San Bernardino City is make ourselves available so that we can make sure that kid is supervised. Because the one problem that we're seeing in distant learning is, it's not that they can't learn distance-wise, is if you don't sign in, you're never going to learn at all.
Or if you don't have Wi-Fi, people are going to McDonald's.
A lot of the schools, Cox and a lot of the cable companies are making Wi-Fi free, and they're giving them those little portable routers so they can get on now. So I can only talk about the kids we have in San Bernardino. They all have a Chromebook that are registered, that the school district gives them with a Wi-Fi that they can get on. So that's not the situation. But still, thousands of kids didn't log on one time because they weren't supervised to do it. Right. Nobody was at their house saying, Greg, go log on and get those last 3 classes taken care of for today.
And when Minecraft's calling your name in the next room, you're going to go play video games.
No, they're playing games. They're doing everything. So what our goal is they'll bring that Chromebook. We'll give them a desk. And for a couple of hours, they will actually log on and finish their homework assignments, get the prep because they're only going to be able to teach them 1 or 2 languages or study program, maybe math and English and maybe social studies.
But those are very basic.
But history is going to have to be learned on distance. Language, you got to remember, we're in California. A lot of ELA is being done just to teach them English. Yep. So those are going to be done online. And so we got to make sure that those kids have the responsibility of using that laptop. Then once they've finished that work and it's turned in and we know it's turned in, now let's go shoot some baskets. Let's go out on the field and throw some baseball. We can do the fun things, kick the soccer ball. We can go and do some STEM work and let you play, Fortnite or whatever. We can do those things after the fact. And that's what we're trying to do with our 1180 facility, give them that supervision that they need. I think if you ask, I'm not going to guess, but I'm going to probably say 70% of parents who are home trying to teach their middle school kids. The elementary is a little bit simpler because they're just starting to learn the A, B's, and C's.
Right, but middle school math, even geometry.
Kids, they're starting to learn, and geometry isn't like what we took.
Sure.
Algebra isn't, this Common Core is different, and a lot of states have gotten rid of it, but we still have it here in California. So I don't know how to teach it, but I have hired good people who do.
Sure, but you have the resources. Otherwise,
I have the resources, and we put them to work. And so that's what we're going to try and do to get through this pandemic, because this era, I hate to say a generation, but there's going to be a segment of this generational gap of higher learning, even at the college level, because they're trying to do everything by their computers.
Yep.
California is not coming back until January. Now it might be until the following year.
Let alone learning disorders. What if someone's dyslexic?
Oh my God. And so you're there are kids who can't learn from a distant learning on the laptop. They're going to fall behind. And so we're going to, the United States and probably some of the other countries as well are going to, where we had a giant influx into technology, it probably is going to get even larger because they do understand technology. But that doesn't mean you can read and you can write.
Right.
And you have social skills and you understand. And let's be honest about it, since we're at that time, we're in the pandemic, not to make light of the situation, but I think the United States, the largest segment of the United States is actually starting to hear about real history through what's going on in our society right now. So much has been I was fortunate that I was given the opportunity to learn Black history from the 7th grade on. That wasn't a part of American history. That wasn't a part of Native American history. It wasn't a part of Jewish American history, let alone when you start talking to cultures. I'm just talking about race.
Yep.
You know, I've got a lot of friends who were like saying to me, you know, my ex-wife is from Tulsa. So I learned about Tulsa and Black Wall Street 25 years ago. I didn't read about that in Black history. It wasn't in our Black history books because the world didn't want to hear that story. I was just reading today. I read something, and I say this to your listeners, you're never too old to learn. And if you think you are, then that's a problem. So I was reading today about in the World War I, how the Black American troops were turned on in the 1943 by the American troops because the Italian country that they were in decided to reverse discriminate. So they made it Black only restaurants, Black only bars. And when the white army heard about that, they got their arms and they went and said, we're going to disrupt, we're going to change this. So they actually found out what it felt like to be a part of that systemic racism.
Interesting.
And so it's just history. And I had never heard that story before. And I mean, I would love to, maybe while I'm sitting here, I'll pull up that little Instagram that the person who shared it with me is like, did you know? And I'm like, no, I never heard the story before.
So much we don't know.
And so much we didn't know. And hopefully through this time, we'll be able to learn more history.
I mean, look at the success of your own family in Alabama.
Right,
you guys were like the Kennedys down there. And that's
you know what? It's funny. I tell my mom, her uncle's son was a pretty special guy. He raised my mom. It's funny. I tell people this story because I've had to share with my kids the value of grandparents, because I only had one grandparent in my entire life. My dad really didn't know his father. He knew him, but he didn't know him.
Yeah.
My mother, her mother passed giving birth to her baby sister, and her father had passed years before. So my uncle raised my mom and her sisters. And my aunt, who was one of the first professors at Tuskegee Uni, her house is actually, my mom, Aunt Peggy's home is on the campus of Tuskegee Institute because her house was the first house at the end of the road. There's a long road that takes you up to Tuskegee Institute. Her house was the first one at the end of the road, and she was one of the earlier professors, and she taught at the high school in Tuskegee. And I got to tell you, my first concert in life was the Jackson 5, right? But guess why? I didn't go to see the Jackson 5. I went to see the Commodores because they grew up with my mom.
Oh, I love the Commodores.
My mom babysitted Lionel Richie. But my Aunt Peggy was their high school teacher.
Wow.
Tuskegee only had, back in the 50s and 60s, they only had one school that the Black kids could go to. Mm-hmm. And Aunt Peggy was their teacher. So she taught them all through high school. And so it's just funny. I laugh because I tell my mom, I go, that Petway family is it's just a large family back in Alabama, and we're all throughout. And it's just amazing because I don't know much about that history. I'm trying to learn it as I get older. My sister is doing the whole genealogy. So we're reaching out and we're able to talk because the opportunities. My dad went to war. He joined the Army. He went to high school with Hank Aaron. They're all from Mobile, Alabama. And so Hank went to Mexico, that most people don't even know. He went to Mexico. That's how he got into the pro baseball, because originally Blacks weren't in baseball. So he had to play in the Mexico League. My dad played football, and it wasn't until I chose to go to Notre Dame, my dad actually said that was my high school dream, to go to Notre Dame. Oh. He ran their high school system in his high school. My dad was the MVP of football. Hank was the MVP of baseball. And one got a chance to play after they left high school. And little baby Greg Bell got in. When I go home, everybody talks about, well, your dad was this, your dad was that. And I generally have to tell them, I said, I'm sure he was a pretty good athlete, but, at the end of the day, I was still better.
Exactly. It's the Penway powerhouses, I tell you that. That is insane. Thank you so much for coming on today. And my dad was super excited. My dad played college football, and he's a coach. And he wanted to ask you, Who do you think has the strongest and weakest players on the NFL, and who do you think is going to do really well this year?
Strongest and the weakest players.
Yeah. Or which team has the strongest?
I can't use the term weakest because all of them are strong. I think you have to, in my mind, I mean, if I were to start a team today, I'd probably start off with Patrick Mahomes. Mm-hmm. Even though I like Jackson, who's at Baltimore, I can't pick Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers. Of course,
it's just obvious,
in their prime, they're depending on the system. But talking about today's game, I really like Patrick Mahomes' game and what he does and how he brings that team together. Considering, let's remember his two biggest stars made mistakes and they're gone. The running back and Tyreek Hill wasn't there for half the season, and he still was capable of taking his team to a Super Bowl. Yep. And so, when you look at what he was able to do, I give him the strongest. In terms of, I don't really want to use the weakest. I'll probably just tell your dad I'm going to do offense and defense.
Okay.
I don't know. To this day, I want to kill Mark Davis and John Gruden because there's no way in my lifetime I'd ever give up Khalil Mack. I think he is a game changer on defense. And unfortunately, he's no longer with the Raiders. He's in Chicago now. Right. But this guy, he's a game changer. I had a chance to meet a kid who made a mistake, and his mistake was glorified. It was a really bad mistake. But I had a chance to go and do a mission trip to Tanzania with Myles Garrett. And I got a chance to meet Myles Garrett, not Myles Garrett, the football player, but I got a chance to meet Myles Garrett, the person. And he's got a great heart on him. I think he's a good human being in heart who made a very bad mistake when he he hit the kid with the helmet. But I met Myles Garrett. I like him. And I'll be going out to see him play if I get a chance to see a game this year. But I plan to go to Cleveland, get a chance to see him, say hello, joke with him a little, because we spent a week in Tanzania really getting a chance to just know this new era of players. In terms of teams, I don't know if I could, that Kansas City team is built to win again. And
that's what my dad said. He said he'll say Kansas City.
Yeah,
he did.
Yeah. And I think Kansas City is built to win again. I think Baltimore is I think they're built to win even better than Kansas City. They just, I think the problem there is that they put so much emphasis on the quarterback, and if he's not on, they won't win. And Patrick Mahomes, he's got a better nucleus around him. And that's why Kansas City is built to win.
Do you think Cam Newton was a good trade for?
I think it's for Bill Belichick.
Yeah.
Here's the one thing you have to understand about Bill Belichick. He generally makes great decisions. When he got out of that element of having to pick the players and run the team when he was in Cleveland, he had a terrible, when you're at the bottom of the poll, you get the first pick. That's not always a good place to be. I tell people that all the time. When I went to Buffalo, they picked me early, and they traded back to pick me, but they were a terrible team. And no matter what kind of player goes there, it's hard to make a team better when it takes 22 players.
Right. This
isn't basketball where one man can really change the outcome. You need 22 players and 2 kickers to really create a team. Mm-hmm. And to make an NFL team better, you need a nucleus around you. And Bill's built he's built a chemistry in New England where they know how to win.
Right.
So Cam is in a position that he's never been in, and he's a winner. I've known Cam since he was in high school. He actually came to one of the first camps I ever did. Mm. We did it in Atlanta, Georgia, me and Oscar Dillard. Cool. And his father Cecil, I've known Cecil. He tried to play in the NFL a couple of years, but it's one of those situations where Cam he's got a lot of gifts. I think once you get by the injuries, he'll probably be starting fairly quickly in New England. And Bill, what's the guy's name? Josh. I can't think of the coordinators. Josh something.
Oh,
and Bill Belichick. They'll create a system around Cam's tools.
Cool.
And Jason Statham will probably learn a lot of those tools because he's a bigger quarterback as well. He's got great legs on him as well. they're not going to have a Tom Brady, and they've been able to evolve that team around the tools that they have. You got to remember, he took a guy that was considered a bad malcontent in Randy Moss, and he had the greatest year to date of any quarterback receiver in the history of the NFL.
I love Randy Moss. I love me some Randy Moss. He was just always in the wrong place at the wrong time because it was on the Vikings. That's the year I cheered. I'm like, Randy, don't do that again. And he and I did a lot of charity events together. Sitting next to him, I just remember I got in huge trouble for asking Randy, "Can you please pass the Sharpie over here? Mine's running out." Oh, you don't fraternize with the players.
Funny story.
He's great.
Randy's from an area called Donnelly Hollow.
Virginia. Is he Virginia?
No, he's from West Virginia.
West Virginia.
It's called. And it's funny because my dad lived in Donnelly Hollow when I was a kid growing up. So
he's got some stories.
Randy heard my name a lot when he was growing up because you don't remember a kid named Fulton Walker. He played for the Miami Dolphins, but a friend of mine, his name was Robert Alexander. He was probably one of the greatest athletes from Charleston, West Virginia. And then here, this kid, Greg Bell, I spent all my summers in Charleston, West Virginia with my dad. And so I set Hershey track and field records that stood for 15 years.
Sure.
I took a team with me and Earl Jones. We won the AAU basketball. Earl Jones, later we found out he was maybe about 4 or 5 years older than all of us.
What?
6'7".
Doesn't matter. You're West Virginia because you kind of.
Hey, look here. He was the number 1 draft pick by the Los Angeles Lakers.
Wow.
Back in 1985. But we were from this area called Donnelly Hollow, and that's part of Rand, West Virginia. And it's so funny, you know.
Why does it sound like Deliverance to me?
His agent, his name is DeTrepido. It was his agent. And Mark Termini was his investment manager. Mark and I went to Notre Dame together.
Cool.
Mark and DeTrepido thought I was the greatest thing since sliced bread. And then I can remember when I was at Notre Dame and I got into the pros, I was about 2 or 3 years in the pros, Lou Holtz called me and wanted me to talk to this kid from Rand, West Virginia.
And it was Randy?
So I talked to Randy, and then I found out when he got in trouble, he ended up using my friend DeTrepido. He's an attorney there, and it's just so funny that, you know, to this day, when I see Mark and DeTrepido, they go, man, I can remember telling Randy, man, Greg Bell, he just used to jump out of the gym and then next thing you know, not only did they have Randy, most people don't know, Randy's high school had about 5 high school All-Americans.
Wow.
Jason Williams, white chocolate, he came out of the same high school. They played at Ram High School together.
Amazing.
We had 2 kids. One of them was captain at Notre Dame as a football linebacker who played on that team. And they had 2 baseball players that went pro. That was a really, you know, Charleston, West Virginia is such a small city. I played with a guy named Dennis Harrah, who was an All-American, All-Pro lineman at the Rams. Dennis went to Charleston High.
Wow.
And we joke about it because he's like, Greg, let's go up. When you go up a street in West Virginia, they call them hollers. So, and then all the hollers had a name. I just happened to come from Donnelly Hollow. And we joke about coming from the hollers all the time.
So
and it's just funny how it's amazing. To give you another story like that one, when I watched the Michael Jordan special, Charles Oakley, Brad Sellers, Ron Harper, Dennis Hobson, and John Paxson, all 5 of those guys, we grew up in high school together.
With the Hollis?
Oh, no. Ohio. They're all in Ohio, Central Ohio. Me and John went to Notre Dame together. Brad, Harper, Hobson all grew up together just south of Cleveland, in Akron, in Lorain, Ohio.
Yeah.
We all know each other. I looked at that special and stuck my head like, oh my God, how great I sit there and said, how great is it? Those are 5 kids from Ohio that we all grew up together.
That's amazing.
We all grew up together, and I'm sitting here watching the special, and they're on this special. I'm going, I forgot all of them played for those Bull teams.
Sure.
And then, there was a 6th one, Granville Waiters. They all came. They were all on those world championship teams with Michael, and I grew up with all 6 of those guys.
Incredible! Look at that area.
I mean, we had some great football and basketball players in Ohio, and I tell people, I said, it's just amazing when you think of California. You think, oh yeah, it's because of the size. You think of New York. I told people, I played in the pros with one person who was from the state of New York. In all my years playing, they always had great basketball players, great runners.
East Coast is definitely basketball.
Football players were, New York City didn't have football teams for a long time.
Central.
I mean, I remember building one of the first football fields with the NFL in the heart of New York. They really just didn't have football fields in the city.
Sure.
So football wasn't a game of choice there, Buffalo and Syracuse and
Rochester.
But not in the city.
Right.
Just not in the city. So it's amazing. But those are some of the great stories, when you live. I'm 58. This August 1st, another month from today, I'll turn 58.
Well, as a vegan, you're going to be 58 forever because you look, I mean, your skin is actually glowing, Greg. I have to tell you. I mean, I think being vegan, you're craving those burgers, but still you look fantastic. And I'm just so glad you're healthy.
Oh, I'm hanging in there. I appreciate it.
But on my final question, what is your favorite cheat food? If it was your last meal on earth,
I told people this will always be a cheat food for me to this very day. But it's not a cheat food anymore because it fits into my vegan diet.
Oh, good.
I love pizza more than anything in this world. I used to have a pizza before a football game and a pizza after. There's a company in Ohio called Donato's. I had their pizzas before the game and after the game.
An entire 14-inch, 16-inch, 12?
The whole large pizza. And I had the thin crust. I love thin crispy crust. And Donato's is still one of the best. It's the largest pizza family in Ohio. That's the only place they make the pizzas in Ohio. But it's all throughout the whole state of Ohio.
Are they related to the Pemways from Alabama? Are they related to the Pemways? Is it Pemway pizza?
No, it's funny. It's the Grody family, and they were right there from South Side of Chicago, Columbus, Ohio. I knew them as a kid growing up, and it's funny. McDonald's bought the company and gave them like $2 billion for their company. Didn't understand how to run it, and they sold it back to them for $500,000. No. $500 million. Excuse me.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say what?
But they made a $1.5 billion transaction in less than a year.
Amazing.
They kept it for McDonald's kept it for 1 year and said, we don't know anything about pizza.
You've got to know that's particular
recipe. Sold it back to him.
Wow.
How funny is that?
Crazy.
So his daughter runs the company now. She's my age. We went to grade school together. Then they went to a big Catholic school.
Yep. And you can make some delicious vegan pizza. I mean, you do miss that pepperoni. Have you tried that weird meat stuff?
Have you ever had? I'm sure you've been to
Crossroads.
Biology. Have you ever been to Biology? Mm-hmm. They do a spicy sausage, so you can have sausage, and it's a plant-based sausage. It's like Safaris.
How is that on the stomach? How is that on the stomach?
Do you go to Chipotle?
Yes.
They have Safaris. You know that Safaris meat?
Oh, so that is vegan.
That's a plant-based meat. That's a plant-based sausage.
Oh, okay.
And they put the same spicy spirit, and I have it all the time. I love it. And they have a plant-based cheese.
That's great. Because some of them you can tell it's definitely not.
Well, I'm going to tell you what, Biology makes the best vegan pizza to me. Mm-hmm. And then Chipotle, that Safaris, I think it's called Safaris or something like that. Okay, I don't roll my tongue right. Safaris. Well, whatever it is. So whatever it is, I do one of those Safaris bowls with the lettuce, the black beans, and it's the best. You know what? That's how I started going to Chipotle.
Yep. And it's healthy. I like quantity.
I was over at my place in Vegas, and I'm just telling you, I don't know why in Vegas, they got a ton of vegan places just all over the place.
Yeah.
And so I always go over there just so I can relax and eat, Now I'm my doctor's got me on this, the STEM doctor's got me eating 3 meals a day and a snack. And so it's like, oh my God, there's more. I generally have a big shake in the morning, and then I'll have dinner probably around 4:30 or 5.
Well, you look amazing, and I really hope that the stem cell treatment helps you.
So far, so good. I like the day after.
Yep.
And now I got to get up and move around because you told me I can't sit too much longer.
Yeah, good. Well, we will get up, but next time I really, I'll email you on the back end for sure after this, but I'm so excited. Thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, you're welcome.
And that was Greg Bell, former NFL running back with a heart of gold who devotes his life to mentoring inner city youth for college prep and football training. You can check out athletesforlife.org, and I'll also put everything else in the below summary. Thank you again, and please subscribe and rate the show on iTunes. You can also listen on Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, Luminary, TuneIn, or at Bleav.com. You can reach out to me for any questions or topics you'd like covered on the show. Stay tuned next week where I'll feature the newly launched app Mindful Menu to help you keep track with your nutrition goals. I'm your host, Anne McDaniels, and thanks again for listening to SoCal Sweat.